People have many reasons why they love iOS 7 or enjoy the style that iOS 7 brought, but in my opinion, iOS 7 is one of the biggest accessibility nightmares to ever reach modern UI design, and has kind of scarred Apple for like 12 years and is still going on to this day. Even with the release of iOS 26, there is reasons why I do not think it is good for accessibility, even to this day, and this all comes from iOS 7. So, 2007, you obviously know, Apple released the first iPhone. The UI was based on real-life objects, kind of like Mac OS X and stuff like that. And this stayed around until iOS 6 in 2012, but even then, a brand new flat design started leaking into iOS 6, specifically in the Passbook. What was in the Passbook app? Well, a brand new flatter design that had thinner text and less skeuomorphism. If you don't know what skeuomorphism is, we'll get into that later. And yeah. The Apple Maps nightmare. If you don't know, unaware of this disaster, let me give you a quick rundown. In 2012, also launched with iOS 6, Apple Maps was the brand new thing. It was no longer Google Maps, because before, the Maps app that came with most iOS versions at the time, like iOS 5, beforehand, shipped with like something based on Google Maps' maps, if that makes any sense. So anyway, when they launched this, it was insanely buggy. And that's a quick rundown. There's a ton of issues with it, like the quality being terrible on like the satellite images and 3D images and stuff like that. It did not look very good at all. And why does this even matter? Why am I even talking about this? Well, who made this? Scott Forstall. If you don't know who Scott Forstall is, he designed Apple Maps, and he was the leader of design from like iOS 1 to like iOS 6. And he got forced out because not only did he not apologize like the rest of Apple, like Tim Cook, for the absolute horrendous mistake that was Apple Maps releasing in that state. He would occasionally clash with another designer, Johnny Ive, who also did like a bunch of like iconic Apple devices, and like the actual design of them, like not like the UI design, like the physical design of them. So he would occasionally clash with Johnny Ive so severely that he would not even appear in meetings with him. So anyway, at the time, Tim Cook had recently just taken over all of Apple, and Steve Jobs had just died very recently. So at the time, Steve Jobs, when he was alive, vouched for skeuomorphism. What is skeuomorphism? Skeuomorphism in layman's terms is UI design based on real life. So Tim Cook and Johnny Ive, once Scott Forstall eventually got fired because of all of those reasons and not apologizing for the Apple Maps disaster. So basically, Steve Jobs liked skeuomorphism and Scott Forstall, and Tim Cook liked Johnny Ive and flat design. Well, so what happened is Scott Forstall got forced out because of all of these issues, and kind of what I like to think is like a get back at Scott Forstall is they came out with iOS 7.
Hey, it's me.
And had a brand new flat design. So, what even is flat design? Flat design is a minimalist design language inspired by international typographic style, also known as Swiss style, and basically everything is flat, which is also the name, flat design. Flat design was starting to gain significant traction in 2010 with the Windows Phone 7. If you know what that is, it's just a Windows Phone, so, which also failed, but it's just, yeah. And eventually Windows 8 started bleeding into Windows 8, actually. Windows 8 just kind of went all flat, unlike Windows 7, and it did not do very well for reasons like that, and it kind of looked terrible at first. And then they had 8.1 come out, and everything looked normal again, except it was all flat as usual. And iOS 7 eventually followed this style with highly translucent, colorful approach to flat design in 2013, and continued to 2024, with the release of iOS 18, and ended in 2025 with the release of iOS 26. So, when iOS 7 first released, obviously it was a massive redesign, had very mixed reactions. People were praising the innovation, some people were And others were complaining about how it kind of looked like a knockoff. I'm pretty young, so but I did experience the difference, like, between like iOS 7 and specifically like iOS 4. I found my cousin's iOS 4 iPad 2nd gen, which I frequently used growing up, very much easier to use than my iOS 8 iPad Air 2. Main reason for this is skeuomorphism, which is UI design based on real life objects, which I mentioned earlier. So why is flat design in iOS 7 such an accessibility nightmare like the title? There are two major reasons I believe this. Reasons number one, the lack of depth and stuff based on real life makes it very hard to understand what you are even looking at or what you're supposed to do specifically. So let me give you some examples. Like, for example, the newsstand icon, which looks nothing like a newsstand, and it's hard to tell what it even is now after it got all flattened and stuff. I'll put an example here for all of these on screen. And other things like the Notes app. If you don't know what the Notes app was beforehand, it looked like a real note, and it looked like you're flipping through notes and stuff like that. Like how the newsstand looked like a real newsstand, would come out like a newsstand and stuff like that. And like how the Compass app didn't even look like a compass anymore, and it was hard to even tell what it even was supposed to be, and it was very hard to understand what you're even supposed to do. Or like all the buttons now were all flattened and had some weird like flat icons on top of it, so it wasn't even very hard to see what you were even clicking on. And reason number two, light text. iOS 7 introduced a different font from older versions of Helvetica Neue, which was the same font that they used in iOS 6 and below, and they used a bolder version of this, and they went to a very ultralight version, also known as Helvetica Neue Ultralight, and the normal version of Helvetica Neue. And these fonts are very thin and are not bold at all, making it hard to read text for people with first vision, and most people not even know how to go into settings and like change settings and accessibility to change the text to the bold text, which was a little thing. Now these reasons are only specific to like the majority of people, like people that are new to tech and people that are not like that great at tech and stuff like that. So this is not for like, oh, me and you probably that is like a severe nerd and is interested in this stuff. This is for the people that are like stupid. Okay, it's kind of hard, but like you get what I mean. People that are not good at tech, which is probably majority of people, and older people that just want to call people on their phone and stuff like that and nothing more. So yeah. Now, I got some examples of people that are like this, like my grandmother, who had to switch from like a old ass flip phone to like a brand new I think she got like an iPhone 5S or something like that, and she didn't even know how to use it at all. And yeah, and like, or my dad, he had struggled with like the brand new redesign because he was an Android user beforehand, and he switched from an Android at the time, which was skeuomorphic, this is like 2014 by the way, to like a iOS 7.1 iPhone 4S, and he had struggled to use that. So conclusion, I do not think iOS 7 looks bad personally. It's just, I don't think it's good for majority of people who are not nerds and do not know how to use their iDevice well, because they just want to call and text people. Now, let's go into like why I think iOS 26 is not a step in the right direction, because a lot of people are misconstruing skeuomorphism with the new looks, like new morphism and glass morphism. Glass morphism is not skeuomorphism because it's just UI design with like elements of glass in it. It's not based on real life like skeuomorphism. Same with new morphism. New morphism, what I like to call it, is just think of like the already flat design we have, but add depth to that. And that is basically iOS 26. Just new morphism, glass morphism together, and it is not skeuomorphism at all. And it just carries over all the same problems Apple has had for 12 years with their design, and it will definitely usher in a new era, but it's not flat design, instead glassy with depth, like I said before, but nowhere skeuomorphism, which is the problem that we had beforehand. So anyway, that is why I think iOS 7 and flat design is an accessibility nightmare. And I didn't even go into all the other different versions of flat design people have come out with, which are like the worst, way worse versions of flat design that are way harder to use and way harder to understand to use. So yeah, like I think Windows 8, to be completely honest, looks way worse than like iOS 7. I feel like iOS 7 is still like one of the most tame versions of flat design because it doesn't look, I mean, obviously it's a radical redesign, but like I feel like it's still way more easier to use, but I don't know if that makes sense at all for like I don't know what majority of people would believe and think like, oh, what they think looks the best or like what is easier to use, because obviously I'm just some random nerd. So anyway, I'm yapping too long. I'm gonna try to make this commentary video time shorter. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share. If you disagree, dislike. If you disagree with me, dislike. Anyway, this has been Derek from Certified Legacy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.